first down. They hand off to Marlon Mack. Huge hole, 50-yard line. He's at the 40, still going near sideline. He's at the 10. He's at the 5, and he will score. Touchdown, Marlon Mack. Touchdown, INDY. And again, it's picked up. It's Darius Leonard. Leonard with his second INT, and he's streaking down the near sideline. He's at the 40. He's at the 30. He's at the 20. He's going to go. A pick six for the Maniac.
Horseshoe is back, baby. The horseshoe is back.
What is going on, Colts Nation, and welcome back to another episode of the Bring the Juice Colts podcast. My friend Michael Terrazas back on the show, man. Michael, just coming off a very emotional roller coaster of a game, but ultimately the Indianapolis Colts, like you said off air, feel a little bit lucky. Indianapolis Colts are lucky as they win a very close one down in Houston by a score 26-20. The Colts improved to 8-4 on the season, tied with the Tennessee Titans, who lost to the Cleveland Browns. So both the Colts and the Titans right now sit at 8-4. Man, Michael, first impressions, man, of this game. There were some moments where it was one of the most frustrating games of the season. There were some moments where you're just like, oh my goodness, how are they doing this? Or how are they allowing this? How did they make that play? It was just up and down all game. How are you feeling after this victory?
I'm feeling lucky. I'm feeling very lucky. And one thing that I have to say about this game, look, and I'm not sure if I've said this on the show, but Houston is our rival. I don't care what anyone says about Jacksonville or even Tennessee. Houston is our rival, and they always play us tough. And you just see it when you have an elite quarterback like Deshaun Watson. He can make your team look much better than it is, and that is exactly what he did today. And I mean, the dude's a stud. He pisses me off about how good he is when he plays against us, but the defense did enough, the offense did enough, and sometimes in this league, you can't dominate every week. Sometimes in this league, you just have to get by, and that's the reality of the NFL. But overall, we're 8-4, man. We're 8-4.
Yeah. I mean, like with Tennessee, like they've won some kind of bullcrap games too a little bit earlier in the season. So it happens in the NFL. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get very unlucky. And so something that we were talking about off air, and we'll get to it, obviously talk about it in more depth. I mean, we see the difference, and I tweeted out earlier, it's almost like missing some of your top players on defense matters. I mean, DeForest Buckner to Deko Autry, getting them back, especially DeForest Buckner, just the impact that he had today was crazy. It's crazy to see the comparisons from him out last week to him in this week. Like, it's just so night and day difference. And that's just a credit to Buckner, how good of a player he is. And I would argue, Michael, and people will say Darius Leonard, but I would argue DeForest Buckner is the most important player on this defense, considering he's a top player at his position. And Frank Reich, Chris Ballard have talked about it, and Matt Eberflus has talked about it. The three technique runs this defense. If you have a good three technique, your defense is going to be as good as it's been. But if you have what we had last year, we saw that you crumble. So overall, man, the DeForest Buckner, huge addition and obviously huge loss when you don't have it in there. What were your overall impressions of Buckner and this defensive line getting some of these starters back today?
You said it. I mean, DeForest Buckner, it's night and day, the difference. It is night and day with DeForest Buckner in this lineup and what it is without it. The Texans offensive line, they surprised me a little bit of how well they were able to, control a little bit of the line of scrimmage with the Colts, but they got enough pressure, even though it just frustrated all of us at how they just couldn't get home. DeForest Buckner got a sack and all that stuff. That is important. And getting these guys back, man, it is very big because they generate pressure. They can control the running game on the defensive side of the ball. So, man, I don't know what else more to say about DeForest Buckner. You see what he is capable of, how he can put his stamp on a game, and he did a little bit of that today, always constantly flushing Deshaun Watson out of the pocket, even though you probably wouldn't want that too much. But, man, the defensive line really, really stepped up a little bit today.
It definitely did. Yeah, let's just get into this a little bit more. So looking at this game, man, Indianapolis at halftime led, I believe, by 4 points. Yep, they led 24-20 at halftime. the rest of the game, the next 2 quarters, the teams combined scored for 2 points, and that wasn't even an offensive score. The Colts got a safety. Justin Houston sacked Deshaun Watson in the end zone, got a safety for the Colts. It really was strange. I mean, we know how good this Colts defense has been in the second half, and they continue to do that again. But this Colts offense did literally nothing. And they had chances, right? That 4th down and 1, which we'll get to because there was a lot of questionable stuff by Frank Reich and company. You know, maybe not so much play call, but like personnel for on that 4th and 1, for example. Just a lot of very puzzling stuff. Why, you know, you were humming in that first half. You really were. You were scoring 24 points. I'm like, oh boy, the Colts are going to drop 40 plus, I think, if they continue this. To only finish with 26 points, something's got to give. What did you notice that you think kind of changed the tides for this Colts offense really kind of really going into a slump here in the second and third quarter there? Or third and fourth quarter, I apologize.
I'm not going to say it's on the fault of the Colts. I'm actually going to give Romeo Crennel some credit here because what he did was that he added some guys in the box in the first half. He dared Phillip Rivers to beat him, and he did. So in the second half, he noticed they got a 3rd string left tackle. So what he did was that he brought his free safety or his strong safety. Normally they were in single high safety coverage, so you knew they were going to stack the box a little bit. And he brought the pressure all day. Phillip Rivers was on that bad toe. He was affected. The offensive line was trying to pick up everybody. You know, Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines, they actually got blown up a little bit trying to meet a safety or a middle linebacker in those gaps. And they got blown up a little bit on their blocks. So I'm actually going to give credit where credit is due. Houston stepped up on defense. J.J. Watt, man, I loved him. I love him, man. He just plays hard every game. I still don't get why we keep leaving Jack Doyle on J.J. Watt. It just mathematically, it does not work. It just does not work. And, you know, there were a couple of things where I saw some missed assignments on the play. I believe it was Jonathan Taylor was hit for like a 3-yard loss, and Smith and Doyle were supposed to double team Watt. Smith didn't even touch Watt, and Jack Doyle was too much on the outside. You're not supposed to have outside leverage on an inside run play. You're supposed to have inside, turn the defense, turn that defender outside, and don't allow him to make the play. And in the offensive side of the ball for the Colts, it was a lack of execution. That's what I saw. I didn't see too many coaching problems. For some reason, there was just a lack of execution. And that's where I give Houston credit. Romeo Crennel came up with the blitz packages, some stunts I saw a little bit. And that I think that's what was the story of the second half.
Yeah, but I mean, at some point you have to, you know, execution's one thing, but play calling also, and personnel, like on that 4th and 1 with Nyheim Hines. Out of all the running backs you're going to run up the middle, Nyheim Hines is the last guy on the Colts running back room I would use. Just stuff like that. It seems like about every game, there's just such a puzzling call that's a crucial thing that happens. And you're just like, what are you doing, Frank? You're an offensive genius. You're too smart for being this dumb. Like, that's just kind of how I feel, at least. Like, I agree. Maybe I don't like necessarily hate the like call. I just hate the personnel you have in there. And Trey Burton out there blocking, like, I don't know. There's just stuff like that just really confuses me. And it just seems like, at least for me, it seems like there's just been a lot of things where, you know, let's face it. Really, the Colts got lucky on that fumble. I mean, they really did. Houston was that close to going down and winning that game. And honestly, if that was a loss, and even if it's not, since it's not a loss, I'm still going to pin it on Reich a little bit. Like, your offense can't come out and just be that absolutely pathetic. I don't care. Like, Houston, credit them, you said. Like, they adjusted, but to not score a single point in the second half, that is inexcusable. Something has to change, man. Something has to give. And, you know, for as much as the Colts said, we're going to keep an eye on J.J. Watt. We've watched more film on him than ever. You know, you mentioned that Jack Doyle, for example, block. What about Chaz Green on one-on-one on J.J. Watt? That is about the dumbest thing you can do, and that resulted in a big sack. Like, just stuff like that just doesn't really make a lot of logical sense for me. And also, Raven Clark left the game pretty early. That's something to monitor on how serious the injury is. You know, early indications, people had said potentially Achilles, but that'll be something worth monitoring as well. But man, let's get into some of the stats though, and some of the good stuff, because there was a lot of good stuff in this matchup. We had to get some of the bad stuff out of the way, some of the questionable stuff, because there wasn't a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination by the Colts. But let's get right into this matchup, man. And you know, first off, we can talk about really the offense in the first half. I thought it was absolutely awesome. I thought they did really, really well. passing the football. T.Y. Hilton had another really good performance. Like last week, he had 80+ yards and a touchdown. This week, he has 100+ in his second home in NRG Stadium. He, for some reason, steps it up every single time.
Yep.
Man, at what point did they just sell T.Y. Hilton the stadium and just let him be the owner? Like at this point, he's just done so much damage against the Houston Texans. I mean, I just love, man, what T.Y. Hilton has done. And, you know, we've called him out a lot this year for not performing, for dropping easy stuff. But the last 2 weeks, T.Y. Hilton's looked really, really good.
Yeah, and I think I said this on either your show or Colts Brawl that, you know, discussing whether we bring back T.Y. Hilton or not, it's not, you know, not definite yet. But what if T.Y. Hilton struggles and in the second half of the season, he turns it up? And that's what he's doing. That is what he's doing. And what I'm noticing is that I don't think there's really much of a change in T.Y. I think Reich is changing some stuff up a little bit and putting him in different situations, because when you bring these new toys in, you bring in, you know, obviously Nyheim Hines is taking on a bigger role. Michael Pittman, you bring him in. Marcus Johnson is back on the team to Michael Harris. You're trying to fit these guys possibly where T.Y. Hilton was. You're trying to place T.Y. Hilton, give him another role, and somewhat it didn't work, it looked like, but then you put T.Y. Hilton back in his role. You know, put him on inside, outside, target him early on, your offense gets going. So the plus side of it is that T.Y. Hilton is not just your game, even though today it kind of looked like it probably was. But now you have guys like a Michael Pittman Jr. and all these other neat little toys and everything. So that's the change I see when it comes to T.Y. Hilton. He's balling out right now. Right now, we don't need it to just come against the Texans because, again, every game right now in this AFC race, it matters. And next week, say what you want about the Raiders defense. They can get hot as anyone. They can get it as hot as Kansas City. That's the fact of it. So T.Y. Hilton's got to keep it going. He has to keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, Hilton led the team with doubled the targets of any other receiver. Michael Pittman had 5. Hilton had 11. He had 8 of those 11 targets for catches, 110 yards and a touchdown. Had that first touchdown early on. One thing I didn't like, though, I felt like the Colts kind of went away from him in the second half, and that's kind of why we saw the dip in the offense and the production. They just kind of went away from T.Y. Hilton. I would like to see them get him more involved in the second half. But I liked what I saw from number 13. It's great to see him starting to get back into form a little bit. The T.Y. that we know. It's good to see him gaining more confidence. Michael Pittman also had another solid day, 5 catches, 46 yards on 5 targets. So he caught all 5 of his targets. So that's definitely good. Jonathan Taylor actually did pretty good in the receiving department too. 3 catches, 44 yards, had that receiving touchdown, obviously on that 4th down. And then also did really, really well running the football, especially in that 4th quarter. I really loved what they did. Would like to see him get even more carries moving forward. I mean, he had 13 rushes for 91 yards, so close to another 100-yard day. The last 2 games, you know, T.Y. Hilton, his last 2 games has had a looked really good. Jonathan Taylor, his last 2 games, obviously he missed last week's action, but the last 2 games he's been active, he's had nearly up around 100 yards. So he's been really, really productive. And Jonathan Taylor today, I mean, he averaged 7 yards a carry, so looking really, really good. I've loved what I've seen from Jonathan Taylor the last couple weeks, right? And the great thing is he's not just a one-dimensional back. Like, he can catch out of the backfield. You saw that speed put on display when he caught that 4th down pass and just outran everybody and scored that touchdown. He's tough. He's physical. And it seems like he's doing one thing that I know has been a big knock on him this season is he wasn't great at forcing missed tackles. He wasn't great at breaking tackles. He really was struggling with that, but it seems like he's doing a lot better at that, really trusting his offensive line a lot more. What has your impression been of Jonathan Taylor? I've really loved what I've seen from him the last couple weeks.
The impression of me is that this is what we all expected. We expect Jonathan Taylor to be Jonathan Taylor. Early on, you saw nerves. You saw him just he wasn't what's the word I'm looking for? He wasn't taking anything in terms of, you know, how the offensive line developed, how everything progressed in that play. He was just going. I've even said it many times. He just needs to calm down, let things develop. Don't just go full speed. When you see something. If you see the A gap come and you see this linebacker over pursue you, don't run into him. Jump cut, spin, do something. And that's what he's done. You know, he had a couple of really good cuts today, a couple of really good jump cuts, and he's been doing that the last 2-3 weeks, I believe. So he needs to keep it going. And I kept saying it the whole game. Why do we keep passing the ball? I just don't understand it, especially when you're getting into the fourth quarter. Your defense is stopping Deshaun Watson. Give them a break, man. Stop forcing Phillip Rivers to go out there and beat Patrick Mahomes. I have said that from day one on our other show, Cody. We cannot have Phillip Rivers go out there and beat Patrick Mahomes.
No.
We can't. And for 3 quarters, that's what Reich tried to do. In the first half, you did it. Adjustments came in the halftime. Third quarter, you came out, everything was messed up. You know, like you said, the defense, give credit to Romeo Crennel and those boys, but offensively, you still need to execute. Blocking was not there. You know, guys looked lost a little bit. So, and we all know the limitations of Phillip Rivers. But in terms of all of that, we still need to adjust so much better. So in terms of Jonathan Taylor, man, he's been really good. I expect his workload to start picking up because something tells me coming down this race, trying to get into the playoffs, I feel like Frank Reich is about to get into some ground and pound. I mean, I would love for him to do that coming up in this next week. So considering the fact that he only had 13 carries against the 31st ranked rush defense, that was surprising to me, but he has to get Jonathan Taylor going. Jonathan Taylor's confidence has now risen. And for a rookie, that is huge. So, Jonathan Taylor, keep it up.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a little bit puzzling considering you mentioned 31 ranked run defense, and then they were actually last in the league in rushing yards per attempt. So only give him 13 attempts, I thought was a little bit puzzling as well. I would like to see him go up in that department as well. You know, in total, the Colts didn't really have a ton of rushing attempts compared to what we hoped they would have. But yeah, overall, I liked what I saw from Jonathan Taylor in 13 rushes and also those 3 catches as well. All right, let's move on to the defense. So the defense obviously struggled a little bit in that first half. They allowed 20 points between first and second quarter. Came out in the third quarter, and they didn't allow the Houston to really do anything. Beyond that last drive where, you know, Houston basically screwed that up, the Colts were able to really hold them in check really well. And, you know, I thought they did really good. Justin Houston, we'll just start there. 3 sacks on the day. Justin Houston came in, I believe he only had like 3.5 sacks or something around that. Came in and had 3 sacks on the day, had about a season total in one game, including that really pivotal safety that gave the Colts over the Texans were driving down. They had to score a touchdown in order to win because Indianapolis put them up by 6 at that point. So loved what I saw from Justin Houston. You know, there'd been some questions. Do you re-sign Houston? Do you re-sign Autry? I think Houston kind of made a nice case for himself today that, you know, he may be over the age of 30, but he still is darn productive. And I loved what I saw from Justin Houston today, getting after the quarterback. He really did a great job all day long, really just getting pressure on Deshaun Watson all day. DeForest Buckner also had 2 sacks. So both your, you know, free agent guys you brought in these last couple off seasons have really, really played well today. So I was really happy with their performance. What were your overall impressions of the defense? They had some good moments. They had some bad moments, but ultimately, man, the second half speaks for itself. And I really was very pleased with how they kind of made adjustments. Matt Eberflus is an elite, I think it's fair to say, at making halftime adjustments at this point. He's done it all season. I've really loved what I've seen from this defense in the second half. What were your overall impressions, though, Michael, of this Colts defense here against the Houston Texans?
I think my overall impression, you know, I'm still trying to put my finger on it because this defense for the last 3 years, and yes, there's been a lot of changes, but there's always seemed to be an inconsistency part of it. But lately, we've seen the difference maker is playmakers. You know, you mentioned Justin Houston, bringing him back. That'll be another conversation for another day. But you expect him to do that against Houston's offensive line. And, I mean, for one, you know, we'll get into this here in a little bit, but in terms of Frank Reich's decision on 4th down, you know, you trust your defense, and that is exactly why. You trust guys like DeForest Buckner, like Justin Houston to get the job done if you pin them that deep. The lack of getting more sacks, I believe, made this game so much more than what it was supposed to be. Because outside of, hell, us not securing, I don't think Deshaun Watson had that much production so far. So when I'm looking at this defensive line, they have to get home. They have to. It's just when Deshaun Watson gets out of the pocket, he is one of the best in the league. And yes, I'm putting him up there with Patrick Mahomes. He has shown that time and time again. Get him down. If you don't, 9 times out of 10, he's completing a pass for 10 plus yards. Bottom line. And the fact that we were able to get him in the end zone, the fact that this defense was able to just force punts. What an interception by Kenny Moore.
Yes.
At first, it looked like, I thought they were going to rule it a catch. But then when they ruled it an interception, I thought it was right because the ball was, I wouldn't say it was loose, but it wasn't fully controlled by any of them before they hit the ground. Kenny Moore came up with it. The ruling on the field was interception, and I saw obvious evidence to keep it at that. And I think this was one of Kenny Moore's best games of his career. And what a day to have it. So I saw that. And one quick thing, where was Rocky Ya-Sin today? TJ Carey played a lot today. That's what I noticed. Rocky Ya-Sin, look, I'm not out here calling him a bust. No way am I doing that, but I'm starting to raise some concerns for him. And we'll see the snap numbers here in a little bit, but I saw lots of 38 and a lot less of 26.
Yeah, I think that was to be expected a little bit, considering what we saw after Rocky Ya-Sin really was rough and kind of benched for TJ Carey last week. His snap numbers just went completely down, so I think it was a little bit of a surprise, but also we kind of saw that coming a little bit. But I think a little bit of a concern for me was, Deshaun Watson obviously is a great quarterback, but he nearly threw for 350 yards against this Colts pass defense. And this pass defense coming in was pretty good. Maybe it's just Deshaun Watson. He was out a lot of his receivers, right? Will Fuller, obviously, but you do have Braden Cooks who had a decent game, 5 catches, 65 yards. But Kiki Kuti and Chad Henson both had over 100 yards in this game. Are you concerned at all with this secondary after that performance? A little bit of a rougher performance compared to their standards this year. What were your overall impressions on the pass defense?
I'm not concerned. One of the reasons being that, again, you're facing Deshaun Watson. It's a division game, but also it's hard, man. In this day and age of offense in the league, it's hard to hold up for 5 or more seconds, especially when your defensive line is not getting home. They're getting pressure. But when he rolls out of the pocket, there's just something between a quarterback and a wide receiver. I wasn't that much of a wide receiver in high school, so I can't relate to that. But as a defender, as a linebacker in high school, man, I remember that, when a quarterback flushed out, now you're not only focusing on him, but sometimes you're also focusing on who to guard, who to cover, because if you have a crossing route coming over the middle, but you also have a post, and now he's flushing out of the pocket, now you're stuck in zone, and you're saying, well, who do I cover? And by the time you make that decision, Deshaun Watson's already made up his mind.
Yeah.
I'm not that worried about the defense because, again, it's hard to hold up that long, man. Now, you can sit there and say these guys were a little bit too wide open for our comfort, and that's fair. But I'm not too worried about it in terms of, are they going to be the reason we lose these next 4 games or anything like that? Are they going to cost us games? I'm not there yet. I still see some good things. Xavier Rhodes is still playing good. He had an interception. It just bounced off his hands. Kari Willis was missing today. I think we really missed his blitz, his speed coming inside. So I think we missed a little bit of that. Julian Blackmon didn't allow too much downfield, so we didn't hear his name, and that's a good thing because Deshaun Watson didn't challenge him. So I'm not too worried.
Yeah. I think the big thing for me is you held Houston to 20 points. That's what stands out to me. Like, you can get all the garbage yards you want. And I don't want to say they're garbage yards because Deshaun Watson did have a really good day. But, you only scored 20 points at the end of the day. You scored 0 in that second half. I would take that all day. If you throw for 400 yards and you only score 20 points, I will take that every single day of the week. So I think that is the big difference for me in maybe the stats were a little bit misleading in this game. But still, Deshaun Watson had a good day. Secondary's got to tighten some things up. You mentioned they were missing Corey Willis. So that is a big loss in and of itself right there. But that'll be something worth monitoring. Corey Willis' availability this next week. Hopefully he can be back against the Raiders, like you mentioned. And so, overall, I thought this was a pretty solid performance, but it did feel like the Colts were trying to hand Houston the game a lot of times. Where it's just like, man, you guys are in control. Just win. And that's been I guess that's been a big gripe of mine. Like, even in that Packers game, I know the Colts ultimately pulled that one out, but like, you should have ended that in regulation. And
after that, Hines fourth down.
Right. And for this one, you should have ended this one in regulation, right? If you didn't get the dumb penalties, if whatever, that is just I think that is just the concern moving forward, something worth monitoring. The Colts just need to close out games a little bit better on the offensive side. Now, the defense has done a really good job. The offense, on the other hand, I feel like they put their defense in kind of bad situations, and the defense, credit them, they've stepped it up about every single time. This week was a little bit of luck, but there's been other weeks with this defense, like against the Packers, forced a fumble, made a play, and won the game. So from the offensive standpoint, there's been some good. We've seen them be able to run the football. They've been able to pass the football. Now they just got to put it all together for 4 quarters. That's the biggest thing for me. They've shown that they can be explosive. They're not one-dimensional anymore, which is big. And I've just really loved what I've seen from this offense in certain spurts, but it's about consistency. And, it comes down to execution, like you mentioned, and play calling, in my opinion, and just not doing dumb things to screw yourself over. Like, don't hold and don't put yourself in 2nd down and 20. Don't do that stuff. It hurts your team. And yeah, I guess that's just my thoughts overall on this offensive performance and just this team performance to end that game. But hey, a win's a win, no matter how ugly. And we'll definitely take this one. Hopefully the Colts, and I know they will, they'll look at the film, they'll figure it out for next week. And man, it would be great because the Raiders haven't looked too great the last couple weeks. They almost lost. I didn't check the last part of that game. I'm assuming they won, but it was a very close game throughout. Oh yeah, they barely beat the Jets, right?
It was like 10 seconds left in the game, and they were like at the 40-yard line, and Derek Carr heaved it to Henry Ruggs, and he caught it for a touchdown. The Jets literally just gave up on that play. Dude, the corner, I don't know what his name is, but the corner was jogging. He was literally jogging behind Henry Ruggs. He was just like, okay, we'll go ahead and catch that touchdown. Like, I'm just sitting there thinking like, dude, the Jets literally, their game plan was to say, hey, if they throw it, just jog. Don't try to make a play. Okay. I think that's what it was. And yeah, real quick to talk a little bit again about this Colts team. Real quick on the Reich 4th down. I'm not going to blame Reich for that one because we always see him go for 4th downs. That's expected. You can't go for 4th downs all the time, and then we'll get mad when he does go for 4th down. That doesn't make any sense to me. But if you want to talk about personnel, yeah, I'll buy that. Right. But in terms of still, as a coach, you preach execution on that play. Nyheim Hines would have gotten the 1st down. And if you want to say JT, he would have gotten the 1st down too. He probably would have muscled his way past it too. But it's the lack of execution, man. The A gap was opened. Trey Burton's job was to pull and pick up that Mike linebacker. He didn't even touch the Mike linebacker. He literally ran past them, and Nyheim Hines met him at the line of scrimmage. It's about execution. We have to learn how to criticize, and people say, why did Reich have him in? Reich didn't put him in. These position coaches are the one that rotate these guys out. And yes, you can say if Reich noticed that, he could have called timeout and changed it up. He could have, definitely. But as a coach, you preach execution. You know your offensive line is better than their front 7. You're not sitting there thinking, dang, Nyheim Hines is too small, man. I can't have him out there. No, you're not thinking that if you're Frank Reich. You're trusting your team. You're trusting execution. Execution wasn't done. And again, he also had confidence in his defense. So I'm not putting that too much on Frank Reich, although the play calling could have been better in the second half. But in that situation, I'm on Frank Reich's side. In terms of it's just execution. Trey Burton, pick up your damn block, dude. I mean, you're a tight end. It's expected. You're going to pull. You're going to meet up with linebackers. You're going to meet up with defensive ends. Do your job. It's that simple. And then for the defensive side of the ball, I think, what was I about to say? Oh, no, in terms of closing games out, dude, nothing burns my soul more than penalties, especially dumb penalties. On a punt return, you know you're not supposed to do two things. And you don't have to know all the X's and O's in football to know that you can't block in the back, and you don't have to know all the things in the world to know you can't hold. It's just that simple. Dude, we would have had a touchdown. Naheem Hines got all the way down, and then they bring it back to the 30-yard line on our end. Like, dude, nothing burns my soul more than stupid penalties. And then on offense, now we're holding. Now we're illegal formations. Dude, get your stuff together. Now that I'm going to put on Frank Reich, because it's your job in practice, situational football. Make sure your guys know what to do. And a little bit that goes to Phillip Rivers too, because he's the veteran. He's the 39-year-old. He's supposed to know where everyone is, where everyone's lined up. Because I know Andrew Luck would have done that, and I know that's a very sensitive name to Colts fans, but he was good at that. So in terms of closing out games, dude, we have got to get better, because one day you're not going to play the Texans every week. You're not going to play we did that against the Packers. We walked out of there, but you're not going to play these lousy teams. You're facing the Raiders. You're going to face Houston again, who's going to come for revenge. You're going to play Pittsburgh. And then you'll probably play Jacksonville, who's playing for the draft at that point. So they have got to get this together. This offensive line has got to get it together. And in terms of a team, dude, in the last 4 minutes, we just love to hold so much. We love to do it. So that burns my soul so much. Against the Packers, I lost my voice. I mean, holding after holding after holding. I'm just like, dude, it's not hard. Put your hands underneath his shoulder pads, grab him, push him back. That is what you are trained to do, and you can't do it. And then you hold, and you know you're not supposed to do it. So that's my opinion on all that stuff. So I just wanted to get that quick segment in.
Yeah, no, totally. I definitely agree with you. It's, it comes down to just not being stupid, not shooting yourselves in the foot. And that's why I said, like, with the Packers game, that was so infuriating. Like, Jonathan Taylor had a touchdown. That would have sealed that game. But you do something stupid. You shoot yourself in the foot. And like you said, Michael, you can get lucky against the Packers every so often. 9 out of 10 times when you play a good team like that, you're going to lose that game.
Yeah.
So the Colts have gotten lucky a couple times with big plays on. The defense has bailed them out countless times. Can you imagine this was like even last year's defense? Like, we would not be at a win. I don't know, man. I don't know if we would be
8-4. We probably would have lost this game today. We would have lost against Green Bay. So you're already looking at 6-6.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot's got to change on this offensive side right now. A lot's got to change, just not being stupid. And if you can clean that up, if you can play better situational football, and Frank Reich is a big part of that, like you mentioned.
Yes, I agree.
If you can do that, and you can just play the brand of football you can play, and it comes down to running the dang ball, Frank, that's probably important. If you can do that, you can win games, and you don't have to make it so dang hard on yourself. I mean, seriously, it's unbelievable. It's like the Colts want to make it as dramatic as possible, it seems like. They don't want to take the easy route. They want to go and screw themselves over, put themselves down, where their defense to make a stop. The Houston's driving, and then win in really like crazy fashion. I think they love to give us Colts fans like heart palpitations, man. It's come to that point where I feel like the Colts just love to do that to us. Yeah. And my heart can't handle much more of this anymore. It's just absolutely crazy. But fortunately, they've been able to come back from those mistakes and win games. But yeah, like you said, when you get into to December and January, like when you start playing these good teams, you can't do that. So it was a good win. We'll celebrate this win. We're 8-4 ultimately. Better record already than last year. So we'll take that any day of the week. But still, definitely don't want this to become a trend.
One thing that I will say about this season is that Colts fans, quit calling for Frank Reich's job. You do realize we are 8-4. We are 8-4. Last year, you're calling for Frank Reich's job and asking Chris Ballard to fire him, make Matt Eberflus the head coach, when all of last season you were calling for Matt Eberflus's job. So, guys, we are 8-4. This team is talented. They're gonna be okay. Yes, sometimes situationally, Frank Reich sometimes goes away with what he said he would want to do. And I was in that Zoom meeting with Derek, your co-host, and a couple of others in training camp. I was with them, and Frank told us, I want to dominate running the football. I want to be consistent running the football. Okay. In the third quarter, I think you had like 2 rushing attempts. So that's not going to get it done. But Colts fans, guys, Frank Reich is not going anywhere. Okay. So we are 8-4. We could be 0-12. We could be the Chicago Bears. So I'm going to take 8-4. I love Frank Reich. I love this team. We are okay. We got to stop playing down to competition. Mm-hmm. And we haven't done that too much this year, but we've caught ourselves in some spots. So far, the Phillip Rivers experiment has gone probably better than I thought it would be. It's gone much better. He's played really good. So I have no complaints, man. Today we did get lucky and everything. We got lucky. It happens in the NFL, guys. It happens in the NFL. Sometimes luck happens. And people want to talk about injuries. Guys, this is the most healthy I can remember us being in recent memory. So, guys, take the win. Enjoy being 8-4. We're in a first place tie. Let's go try and win the division, and let's try and make it to – dang, I forgot where the Super Bowl – let's try and make it to Tampa, all right? That's all I got to say.
Absolutely. And I hope people don't confuse, like, my tweets sometimes with me wanting Frank Reich gone, because that's not the case at all. It's just we're critical. I think we're objective, and we say, how many times are we going to say Frank Reich – you know, we could blame some of this loss on him. And I think that's just, we want him to improve. It's not a hate thing. It's like we want him to be better in certain situations, not calling for his job, because they're 8-4. Like you said, they're 8-4 with a 38-year-old quarterback, with their starting running back out, with their team's been off and on injured. It seems like they can never get a break. And they're starting to get a little bit more healthy now, and they're starting to show they're a pretty solid football team, and they could maybe make some damage in the AFC playoffs.
I am going to be very curious to see how this team would match up against the teams in the AFC. Because right now, Cody, I mean, we're 8-4, but man, we are right there. We are right there from being in and then from being out. We're right there. The AFC is tough, man. The Ravens, they're getting Lamar Jackson back. They're going to play those pathetic Cowboys that are an hour and a half away from me. They're going to they got to play Cleveland, so I'm definitely rooting for them to lose. And then Miami, 8-4. I mean, Flores, head coach of the year, you got to give it to him. So Cleveland, 9-3, we lose that head-to-head. So, and then you got Las Vegas. That's why. And if you want to keep winning, you have 4 more games left, I believe.
Yeah.
4 more games left against AFC opponents. Win. Because right now, in terms of the division, the only reason why Tennessee probably has a leg up is because they're 1 game up in the division.
Right.
So try and maybe pass Tennessee, get that conference record better, and then you're in. Because if we match up against the Titans or the Browns, I would love that. I love that matchup against Buffalo. I think that would be gritty. Kansas City, good Lord. I mean,
yeah, seriously.
Oh, man. But, I mean, I'm still curious to see where Pittsburgh ends up because, I mean, they are 11-0 to their credit, but sometimes it's just like they squeak by, and again, sometimes luck. So, dude, these AFC playoffs, they're going to be much tougher than the NFC. I'll say that. But the AFC, man, nothing's for sure right now with 4 weeks to go. The Colts they still control their own destiny. And this is when you love Phillip Rivers, Xavier Rhodes, DeForest Buckner, Justin Houston, possibly Anthony Costanzo, T.Y. Hilton. they will up the ante in practice, in meeting rooms. They will teach these rookies, hey, man, don't rest on your laurels. We're 8-4, okay? That don't mean squat in this league. You can go 8-4, finish 8-8. So we're not about to have that happen. DeForest Buckner is starting to turn up his play. I can see it. I'm excited, man. I'm hella excited for this last quarter of the season. It's time to make a break, man. I remember we talked about the schedule when it came out on the other show, and we talked about this last 6-game parlay for the season. 6 AFC opponents, I believe 4 of those division opponents. Mm-hmm. That's going to determine if the Colts get in the playoffs. And look at that. It's about to determine if they get into the playoffs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's great that they're right there with all the AFC teams. Like, they are right there and showing that they're one of the best teams in the AFC. Like, you got Pittsburgh, you got Kansas City, and then there's that number 2 tier. I think the Colts are right there at the top of that. And I think that's definitely super encouraging as a Colts fan with, based off everything we saw last year with that second half collapse, when you had the same record at 5-2, and now you're sitting here, you already have more wins than you had last year in that backslide. So you just looking at where the teams were last year at this point from 2019 to 2020, it's a worlds of difference. It is insanely different. So much more better in terms of depth, in terms of, you still have guys injured, Costanzo, Bobby Okereke. You even got, LaRaven Clark, we'll say what we want about him. He's hurt. You got some of those guys, but
Allen too, some good punts today.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Ryan Allen. He had some really good punts today. I really liked what I saw from him. Blankenship obviously was good on that field goal, so that was great. I believe it was a 42-yarder or something along there, 40 plus. But anyway, I thought overall, yeah, this special teams unit looked pretty good again today. You mentioned Nyheim Hines should have had a punt return for a touchdown. I was really liking what I saw from there. Isaiah Rodgers, he had a concussion, but he came back, so that's good news at least. So hopefully he'll be available for next week's matchup. But yeah, overall, good win. A little bit lucky, but hey, that's what it takes in the NFL. Ultimately, the Colts are 8-4. They have a chance to control their own destiny, still a chance at the division, which is certainly the best you could ask for at this point right now, especially because Tennessee really got embarrassed. So I'm really excited to see exactly what happens these next 4 games. The Colts really control their own destiny. And really, if they can win a couple more of these games, if they could somehow win out, that would be incredible. If they can finish 12-4, which I think is very achievable. I mean, all these teams, none of these teams I would say are completely unbeatable. Pittsburgh's 11-0, but let's face it, there's been some teams they probably should have lost to. They kind of haven't played the greatest teams either in certain ways, but they're 11-0, so I'm not going to argue with that.
And they lost Bud Dupree.
Right. And, they've lost Bud Dupree, which is a big loss. The Raiders just almost, if you play any other competent team, they're losers of 2 straight. Let's be real. But they got embarrassed the week before. They only scored 3 points. So then you got Houston, you just beat Jacksonville, who's tanking. So really, you could go 4-0 in these next 4 games. Realistically, you could. I don't know if that's going to happen just because of the NFL, and we know how that is from week to week. You can never be too careful. But overall, the great news is, from a Colts fan standpoint, the Colts have a shot in every single one of these games. And this will really tell Michael, is this team a legit playoff contender? Are they? It'll really be telling here in the next couple weeks. But that'll wrap up this one, guys. Thanks for tuning in so much. Thank you, Michael, for coming in and recapping this very dramatic win, but win nonetheless.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Colts Nation, for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.